Good morning, United Kingdom, and I think we've got Lakhi Singh on. Okay, good morning, United Kingdom. There we are. And welcome to the Drive Time session with Lakhi Singh, and the Drive Time live session, where we have various topics of interest revolving around the property market, finance, legals, and general property problems that the likes of Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, the mixer, the dixer, the what else can we think of? Well, there's something else there. We'll put it down by the end of the show. Anyhow, he's the man to go to apparently, and so say everybody in London. Apparently, he has a solution for every type of problem. And before we continue, the topic for today is good news. Good festive news for borrowers, because the central bank rate has decided to stay low for another quarter at 0.10. So excellent news for borrowers, and I think it's a good way to welcome in the new year, give people a feeling that life isn't so hard, even with all the inflationary prices and the restrictions because of COVID, etc., that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. So, without further ado, we shall say good morning to Lakhi Singh, the man of the hour. Good morning, sir. Lakhi Singh, how are you doing, and what's the weather like there in the square mile?
Well, the weather is, it's not too cold actually for this time of the year, coming up to the day of Christmas Eve today, which I think is quite a big day for a lot of people in the United Kingdom. So the weather's quite mild for this time of the year actually, so we would expect it to be quite frosty and snowy.
So it's not going to be a white Christmas, or is it going to be a white Christmas? Or are you going
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be an all white Christmas. I think it's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be all white.
Excelente. Right, sir. Go on with the topic. What do you think? Is that good news for borrowers? 0.10% on your lending rate. Is that the good news, or is that is that bad? Is that sort of does it say something else about the market? Lakhi Singh, what do you say?
Well, I mean, I'm no expert in how the Chancellor actually decided to, well, the Bank of England committee actually decided to, the MPC Monetary Committee actually decide how to actually run their affairs. But there's a huge pressure on inflation at the moment. So I don't think they had a choice but to actually increase it, because the price inflation is actually huge. So they had to actually do something or show some sort of move upwards. So I think that's the main reason behind it. So I think it's definitely good news for people that have got a lot of money and they're looking for a better return on their money. But those people that are borrowing money, is frankly probably not as good news. If the pressure is towards higher interest rates, then for them it's possibly a concern as to really what they should be doing. If interest rates go up to a certain point, it could affect their property portfolio, it could affect their property growth strategy, it could be affecting their property consolidation strategy, it could be affecting really their approach to the way they're restructuring, or whether they need to refinance. Should they be in a fixed rate or should they stay on a variable rate? So a lot of people are probably on tenterhooks at the moment, thinking, which way is it going to go?
So which way do you think it's going to go, sir, next year, the first quarter? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think we've been saying all along that the only way is up. So because interest rates have stayed at probably it's a record low, but I think that's probably the lowest they've ever been actually in the history of the UK economy, and over the longest period of time, I think as well, at more or less 0% for over a year now, I think.
Yeah.
So I think the likelihood is they will go back up to pre-COVID times, maybe go back to a couple of years. So expecting at least jump up to 2 or 3%, and possibly more.
So before this recent adjustment, what was the rate that the central bank was applying? Was it zero? Was it 0% interest rate? Was it?
It's 0%. That's right.
So this 0.1 of a raise is just a small increase, but nothing major to disrupt the market. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just a smidgen. It's actually somewhat more of a indication that the way things are going to go. But having a 0.1 raise is pretty much not like not having a raise. It's more of a, I would say, more of a hint as towards where things may go, as opposed that things will change. So it gives time to get people to bunker down if they need to.
Okay, great. So what do you think is one of the indicators of this interest rate hike? Is it that there's going to be a major hike in the next quarter? Is it going to be that it stays flat for the next year? What do you think is going to happen?
I think the likelihood of interest rates is going to have to go up. This is a huge amount of price inflation, the price of food, the price of construction materials, as well as various other factors. So I think it's definitely going to go up further. I think they could go up quite quickly. So it is a concern if, as being in the property market, that this could be a repeat of there's a possibility that it could be a repeat of what happened in 2008, where interest rates went up by a couple of percent, and it knocked out a lot of people in the property market and put them into negative cash flow very quickly over a period of a couple of months.
Yeah.
So that danger is there for anybody who's probably too young to remember that. I think then this is probably a time to rethink, reevaluate, review, and then take action possibly in the next couple of weeks. So we are getting clients actually. I mean, we had a literally client a few weeks ago. I think they've come to us for quite a large, sizable portfolio where they want to refinance all their properties now into a fixed rate, but a long-term fixed rate for the next 15 years, because I think they're quite savvy when it comes to these type of things.
Okay. That's good. Okay. So generally, I mean, how does the market in other areas look to you, Lakhi Singh? And what's the impact of this new COVID issue? They're saying it's more transmittable. They're saying it's not as aggressive as the Delta variant, but then they're saying transmittability is more dangerous than the actual virus strength. Is that correct?
Well, there's lots of information flying around, and the UK media or the media machine doesn't always give you the accurate information or a comprehensive picture. They give you the picture that's actually in line with really maybe what the government wants to do, and which may be in the general public interest. So I think there's a lot of scaremongering going on, more than there should be. And I think even though there's a huge, I mean, from what I've understood, I think the amount of cases we've got is more than last year. But I think they're saying that the chances of somebody having a serious knock-on effect if they're over 80 is 50% with the Delta variant.
Yeah.
But with the Omicron variant, they're saying it's 20%. So if you're in your 80s and you get this more infectious virus, the chances are 2 out of 10 potentially that they could be fatal. So that in itself is very serious. So we can't not knock that stat. But at the same time, how does it affect the overall population? It definitely affects anybody that's actually vulnerable and has probably got an underlying health issue or is in their later years in life, in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. But the majority of the population, they get it. For them, it's more like a common cold. So the question is, when you go to the hospital, if something happens, you've had a heart attack or got cancer or something, you've had another type of issue unrelated to this particular variant or COVID-19, then deaths are still being classified as COVID-19, even though you might have been knocked over by a car. So there are a lot of bits of information which are not quite straight as they need to be to get a fuller picture. But anyway, I think in some ways, whatever the government's doing, they're doing it in the best interest of the public. But the question is, there should be more transparency from the media machine to actually talk about the truer picture of what Omicron really is, and the real things that are happening in South Africa post it being released over here and what's been going on over here. So I think the information that I've read in various social media sites is slightly different about Omicron. But because there's so much fake news as well, it's difficult to tell what's what if you are a layperson in the understanding of biological pandemics. So I wouldn't really want to make any substantive comments. I'm just going by what I can hear and see because I'm focused on property. But obviously, this affects all of us. And but what I can see is that there's hardly anybody in London now because most people have been asked to work from home. But yesterday was pre-Christmas Eve, one of the quietest nights in London ever seen during in the last 20 years. There's hardly anybody around. So I think probably
sad though, isn't it? Not to see the shopping rush on Oxford Street. You're saying it's totally quiet, is it? Shopkeepers are.
Well, I'm judged. I didn't really go shopping, but I did actually go out just to have a quick walk quite late last night in town, and went to 4 or 5 different restaurants just to sort of meet a couple of people, a couple of friends. Found that they were probably about 30% capacity.
Sorry about that, my learned friend. I was trying to organize my soup. So, right, okay, so.
That's super.
Soup, yes, super. Right, okay, so the only question that's going to come to mind is it going to be a repeat of 2020? Is it going to repeat of 2020 or 21? Are we going to see everything in lockdown again and we're going to go through the whole process? Or is it going to be a short-lived lockdown?
My guess, I think, is going to be short. My gut feeling is a short-lived lockdown. Because once, I think it's not as restrictive coming up to Christmas quite in the same way, because we had a very serious lockdown last time, and I think they pretty much opened things up for people. But this time around, it's the other way around. I think there's a lot of people. There's hardly any restrictions, but they're now moving back into some form of restriction. So it's a little bit more difficult to get the public to engage in restrictions quite in the same way, apart from working from home and having a mask with public transport. And I think if you're going to any nightclubs, you're going to have to be vaccinated or show a, if you're non-vaccinated, then show a pass with an NHS sort of scan code to show that you've had the test in the last 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
So, I don't, so the funny thing is that you can actually get into a bar, restaurant without any checks, but in a nightclub you have to have these particular passes. So, but I would say there's less nightclubs and there's probably more bars, pubs, and restaurants. So, but nevertheless, I think a lot of people are actually scared of going out because of Omicron. And I think the biggest scare is that if you've got people with underlying health issues and you're in the same household, then I think that's actually the major concern for a lot of people. You know, whether they should be, how close they should be getting to people that potentially could be vulnerable, even though they've had 2 jabs and the booster. Some people that have actually had the jab and the booster are still known to be be in a situation where they've been hit by COVID and haven't been able to survive it. So there's quite a few anomalies with the information that you get from the media and what's happening underlying, because the stats aren't really 100% clear. There's a lot of manipulation of the stats, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so you're saying it's not as bad as the first lockdown. Don't you think this is it something else apart from the purpose of locking everyone down? Is there something else that you think is happening with this virus? Is it some sort of like weird testing going on? Or what do you think is happening?
I don't know. I think I have no idea, and I'm basically just continuing focusing on my work. I'm not trying to overread into it, because you can just make yourself go crazy overthinking things.
Yeah.
So the key thing is just to keep yourself healthy, keep connected with your own the Almighty, and do your look after your spiritual, mental, physical sort of well-being, and then whatever's around you, if you sort of you're more likely to pick up on something's wrong if you are in a good state yourself. So I think just focus on yourself, not really worry too much about what's going on around you, because that's something you can't control. But I think I'm not really spending time actually concerning myself in terms of what is behind all of this, because like I said, you can actually start getting defocused, and if you start worrying about it, you're creating a problem for yourself. So it's better not to even think about it and just try and just focus on just continuity.
There you have some solid, healthy advice from Lakhi Singh, and that's probably a tip as to how you are yourself so successful. Is it the focus? Is it the determination? What is it that drives you, even and in spite of all of this, the virus, the environment of the virus and lockdown, and what keeps you determined and focused?
I think it's important to have good people around you who give you solid, sound advice, and I think it's important to listen and be conscious of yourself and conscious of what's going around you. And I think you can easily get caught up in your own day-to-day things, but I think being listening to what's going around with you and actually understanding what's important, what's not, and not actually listening to every single thing, but being very clear about filtering what's important and what's not. It's not easy. It's not an easy exercise to do, but it's important to actually realize what's critical, what's essential, and then what's important, and then what's desirable. And if you can distinguish that and keep that focus,
Well,
then
there's five things there. So you've got desirable. One, did you say it was critical? The other you said was essential. Fourth, you said was
important.
important. And what was the fifth?
That was it. Those four.
Four. So how do you determine the difference between these? What do you do? What's the formula for trying to see the woods from the trees?
So for each type of category that I'm working on, I then have different levels of those. So in business, there's certain things which are critical, some are essential, some are important, some are desirable. That'd be good to have. And if you've actually managed to keep up with most of the critical ones, for example, then you can start focusing on other things which are essential. And once you've ticked off your essential list, which sometimes is never ending, really. Sometimes, then you can move on to important. Then sometimes there's things which are desirable as well, and the question is, for most of us, we probably want to just do things which are desirable because they're the fun ones. And the question is balancing out what's desirable with the other three in a way that gets you results. Because there's another thing, isn't it? All play and know that all play. What's the saying? Makes
Work and
Jack a
no
dull
play
boy.
makes Jack a dull boy.
Exactly. So you can't always be working on critical and essential because you probably end up driving yourself mad. So I think having a healthy balance between all four is good. And I think for me, I'm not probably a usual person. For me, the critical and essential stuff for me is somewhat desirable as well. I do actually enjoy my work, and I actually like to learn, like to sort of be out there meeting people. So everything about my work is very interesting. Even the things I don't like doing, which are critical, I find a challenge as well. So I find the fun, and the work is done.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got this situation. Interest rates. I mean, if you look at the fact that the interest rate has gone up, whether it's by 0.1% or not, it has gone up. And you said in your introduction that it's somewhat indicative of what's going to happen. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the fact it's gone up by 1%? What do you mean that's indicative?
So if I was to send out a message to the market to say we are potentially serious about doing something in this direction, but we want you to start realizing and putting in necessary
Measures.
protocols, measures, whatever, to implement whatever you need before it gets to a stage where it might become a bit untenable, not doable.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives people at least a warning. It's a warning sign. So if you want to look at it from a risk point of view, then I would say then it's an indicator, and you can either choose to look at it from a risk point of view, or you can look at it just as something that's been done.
Yeah.
But I think it's better to look at it from a risk point of view, because if it does affect you financially, and it is an indication that's telling you, well, this is the way things are going to go now, so you better start organizing yourself, consolidating, or structuring your finances as a corporation, conglomerate, or as an individual. Then I think it's better to look at it in that particular way, and then you can be at least comprehensive in your planning decisions going forward. And if things don't get that way for whatever reason, somehow there's a miracle and inflation suddenly goes down, and there's a like something drastic happens that we weren't expecting. There's sort of a global change. Suddenly money starts raining down or something somehow. Then it's a different matter. But on the whole, I would say it's better. It's a good time now, and now coming up to literally 24, 25, 7 days to New Year's Day. It's a very good time actually to take this next week out and start thinking about how to manage affairs, because a lot of people think, okay, well, it's been so bad for a year with COVID, it's been so bad with Brexit, it's been so bad with the economy and the hospitality industry. So things can only get better, especially now coming up to Christmas. People are thinking they're going to get better because they're going to get lots of presents. But what if they are not going to get any better? And the question is not if they're going to get better. The question is, if they get worse, how are you going to organize and manage your individual finances, your investment portfolio, your SME, your corporation, your conglomerate.
Okay, and what do you see as a major challenge then of all the challenges that you see it's going to affect everybody?
I think the major challenge is going to be if you've got a position where you're somewhat highly geared or middle geared, then you can't really change that position, and you may not be able to change it quick enough. So I would say some of the fundamental words or key words that come to mind is, if you are highly geared, then you need to reduce your debt down, either by selling or refinancing or restructuring. So those are the things that come to mind straight away. And if you're not doing those type of things, or not considering them, because you're looking at this point one as maybe like just a gesture, not necessarily, or reading into anything by it, then you could be putting yourself at risk.
Okay. What about the impact it will have on lending? Do you see lending, commercial lending, general lending, is that going to go up? Are you going to have more business available? Is it going to go down? Is it going to come tighter? What's going to happen with lending?
Well, lending, I mean, there's lots of cheap money out there at the moment, but as soon as interest rates go up, then the cheap money is not going to be around anymore, because people wouldn't want to lend it out that easily. And if you haven't got the credentials or the financial strength to be borrowing that type of money, then it's only going to go to the people that have got the track record and the capability of almost putting their life down to say that they're going to be able to pay the money back. But if you haven't got those sort of credentials and you're seen as high risk, then you're not going to be able to get any money. Simple as that. So simple facts. So the thing here is going to be anybody that's in a middle position. You need to get yourself in a position where you are in a zero risk game, where you're not opening yourself up to any potential threats from anything that happens in the market. And you may need to exit certain markets where your debt lending is quite high, high lending, and maybe move into other areas with the equity that you've got or the cash that you release
Yeah.
to reduce your exposure, or actually just hold the cash ready for tightening in the market for you to be restructuring and reinvesting into a new marketplace, which is fundamentally is what's happening around us at the moment.
Right. Okay. So I mean, you're in the city of London. You're sitting where the um, main movers and shakers take their decision. What's your census say? What does your informant say about what's going to happen next year? What's it going to really be about? What's the year going to be really about? Is it about technology? Is it about shift of business practice, working environment? What's the main thing going to be next year? What have they got on the cards?
Well, I think the government's pumped a lot of money into the economy to keep it afloat and almost given a lot of free money away. And that money is now being spent by people semi-recklessly in some ways because they've got easy money. And what's going to happen is that the government actually needs that money back to keep itself afloat. And there's only so much money they can pump out. And if there's another pandemic, even if it's worse, they're not going to be able to actually sustain the level of pumping money into the economy as they've been doing. So that's point one. Point two is because of Brexit, because of other factors in terms of general performance by the UK economy. The performance is not good. So, and inflation is going higher. So the government may not have a choice but to basically be forced to create a situation where it makes it more or less impossible for many people to survive potential crash or a dip in the market in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
So I'll just be wary and be looking to take cash out because there's a huge sort of artificial pump up of prices. In some ways, London actually, because of COVID-19, hasn't actually gone up that much compared to the rest of the country. So if anything, London probably won't suffer as badly, maybe as the rest of the country or the many cities around the United Kingdom, which have seen a huge sort of, I think at least like something like 12% plus rise in property prices in the last year or so, in terms of the house price index.
Okay. So we got these surges of fuel prices and the impact that may have on manufacturing. Do you see
Yeah.
outside on the general populace a feeling of hope, or is it now a feeling of sort of uncertainty or discontent? What's the feeling amongst the movers and the shakers in the square mile that you?
But to be honest, anybody I've spoken to um, that's fairly cash rich, I think they're usually quite shrewd business people, so they're always ahead of the curve anyway. So they're probably not the type of people to go by because they are ahead of the curve. So they are. So anybody that's actually quite savvy is a couple of years ahead of what's happening in the economy. Because if they know a crash is coming, what they've already done is they've cashed out a lot of their businesses a couple of years ago, taken their money out, and what they're doing is they're actually not investing. They're only buying companies and organizations which are sort of recession proof. And what they're doing is they're buying companies also with an existing turnover, and then helping them to grow in maybe sectors which are recession proof. So food is always.
How does that run through for property related businesses and something of your own interest? How are you looking at acquiring other companies or businesses in the same way?
Well, what I'm doing is I think for the last 10, 15 years I've had very much focused on just advising clients on helping them with their property problems. And what I'm doing is I'm actually myself trying to follow the practices I'm preaching, which is actually to raise a cash sum or a fund to actually start buying assets around the country. So I think that's actually on the cards.
That you will
Sorry?
have.
Sorry?
What type of money are you thinking to raise?
Well, it's going to be small amounts. It's not going to be massive because I'm just building up. It's going to start building up a cash pot for myself individually. So it's probably going to be starting small and then slowly growing as a sort of sideline portfolio. But I'm still formulating it because I spend so much time helping clients with their properties and portfolios. I don't always get time to actually build my own. So I've actually decided I need to sort of start doing things for myself to actually get my own something up and running. It's something I used to do 15 years ago. But now I'm going to start again probably in second quarter next year.
Yeah.
In 2022.
Yes.
Probably start planning now, start thinking it through, and then start purchasing ready for the crash. And I've already got about £900 million worth of investors or buyers that want to buy through me. So because I'll have a lot of buying power for them, and I'm also qualifying their properties, I'll be able to pick up properties on the way for myself as well as an individual.
Right. Okay, so you're going to be raising around 900 million. Is it 90
And I'm
million?
saying that those funds are already there from various buyers I work with. So I'm saying they've already got the funds, and I'm actually leveraging their funds as buying power. But because we got buying power, you're able to then, and I'm also qualifying a lot of their property deals. Helping them to look at how to fund them, how to buy them, help to source them, and maybe possibly help to sell some of the assets that they've already acquired that want to sell. So I'm developing deep relationships like that, and I think by the time I come to quarter 2 of next year, I probably have an access to about
a billion, maybe.
Probably about 10 billion of funds from various buyers.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're working at that level, there's. I'm not looking to be buying billions of assets. I'll probably be looking to buy probably a couple of £1 million worth of assets just to build up a small portfolio.
So what's the business ethic in the square mile? Because I'm being told business works in a different way in the square mile. Is that correct as a statement, or is that just hearsay?
Well, the prime central market in London is probably the most convoluted and most diverse in terms of the dynamics of it. And it's probably one of the most difficult markets to operate in if you're going to come in it new and think you're going to be able to buy and sell easily or act as an agent easily or be an off-market specialist easily. I think a lot of people that are successful in that market have got over 10 to 15 years of experience working in it. And it's a fine cocktail of technical skills, people you know, the old school boy network, various sort of syndicates of ultra high net families that sort of work in this sort of area, and some of them are very, let's just say, they're very tight with themselves, and anything that happens in the market they know about. So if you're new, even spent a year here, that's not quite enough to be able to even make anything happen. To make anything happen, I think minimum you need about 5 to 10 years, or you need to be at least mentored by somebody who's been around for the last 10 years, who's actually seen the highs and lows of actually dealing with, I'm not even talking about the 10, 20 million pound deals. I'm talking about even just working in something like Fulham on a £500,000 or a £1 million deal or £2 million deal. They can be quite complex. So obviously having the advantage of being in the property industry myself and being in London myself for about the last 30 years, even then I think you've got to be on your guard. So I never really take anything. I think working in London, I take with a pinch of salt. So I don't really take any of that too seriously. And I think there's a very important saying that I have, or a motto that I have, which I'm happy to share with you. I think I've got it written down on my other phone actually, which is downstairs. But basically, from what off the top of my head, so when you meet somebody, you have to. I think you need to listen. Number one, but you don't necessarily need to. You shouldn't believe anything anybody tells you. And the third thing is you need to check, then check and check again. And I think those are 2-3 things which help you to at least get to a point. And even then, there's no real necessary chance of you getting a deal over the line. So if you did that, and you did that in every conversation, every deal that you did, then you'd probably find that your potentials of results, you're about 5% there anyway in the right direction.
Wow. Well, doesn't it sound a bit complicated though? I mean, why isn't it just as straightforward as it is in the rest of the country?
I think there's a culture of a joker broker type situation in London, where out of every maybe 40 people you meet, 39 tend to be people that will tell you what you want to hear, and maybe one will tell you the truth. And I think because of that culture that's been normalized, because there's a lot of money involved, people want to make money, they'll tell you what you want to hear to get a deal across the line. So typical situation, somebody's got a £2 million property to sell, they approach an agent, say, can you sell it? Because there's very few properties on the market, and there's a huge matching exercise and people can make a big commission. They'll pretty much say anything to be able to get the property in their books and say, yeah, I've got 1,000 buyers in my book, so give it to me. So they'll get the contract. So they'll get it for 2 million. So the property might even be worth about 2.3. So what they'll do is they'll price the property up at 2.5. Actually, let's be more realistic. Let's just say they price it up at market price 2.3 because they want to make the sale. So they give it to somebody who thinks who says they're a strong buyer, that buyer will say, "Oh yeah, I can deliver on that," and I've got another 5 buyers. So they agree a commission fee with them, get everything arranged, think everything's going to go through. But reality is that's also a broker. And what that broker's done is they've got the properties maybe exclusively from you, and then they've actually put it up at 2.5 to make 200,000 in the middle. And then at 2.5, they put it out to their buyers, but it's gone out to about 10 buyers. And before you know it, the person who's actually original agent that's actually taken on the property gets a phone call from Mr. or Mrs. X to say, "Hey, by the way, I've got a property to sell." And you say, "Oh, that's the property I've just given to this guy." And I said, "No, I'm actually exclusive to it." So that's quite a typical conversation. It happens pretty much thousands of times every day in London. And unfortunately, that's just the norm of the way the London property market can work.
Does it make the property market very convoluted, very difficult to deal with?
It's only convoluted and complicated and difficult to deal with if you are a rookie, as the Americans say. It's a rookie, rookie mistake sort of thing. But if you can see the wood for the trees, then you can't be fooled by anything.
Excellent, excellent. Now, what do you say about the property market? Is it going to, have a major turnaround again? If the interest rates do go up, okay, money's going to become expensive. What about the property market? Where do you see that going? Is it going to stay flat?
I think the property market is going to have a correction. I mean, the stamp duty holiday is gone now. The tax, there's about 6 or 7 different various tax that were introduced over the course of the last 10 years. I'm not even going to go into detail. One major one was that you can't really get interest relief against your tax anymore for any rent that any mortgages that you're paying for your property portfolio. Now, if you just take those 2 things alone, they're quite massive in terms of creating a dip. So if for the last 2 years billions of pounds have been given to people and they've had a lot of free money, obviously they're going to be buying assets or buying things or putting money back into the economy somehow. You've got a very spendthrift type culture in the UK, and it's that psychology of wanting to buy assets, accumulation, means that a lot of people have gone out and bought assets. But the reality is that when the prices go up, well, the interest rate goes up, the cost of borrowing is going to be higher. So when you sell a property, the loan to values are going to become lower. So banks aren't going to be willing to lend so much. So people are going to have to potentially sell at a reduced price to actually get out of their debt problems. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think it's inevitable that there'll be lots of free fall prices in certain areas around the country, and there will be bargains to be had for anybody who's actually now got their cash ready because they're ahead of the curve.
Right. Okay. So it's still turbulent times, and isn't it, Lakhi Singh, in terms of the economies, in terms of the world order, in terms of supply chain management, commodities. Nothing's really, nothing. We're not out of the woods. Is that correct as a statement? We're not really anywhere. We're still stuck where we were.
Yeah, I think there's. I think the media frenzy has just been on the pandemic. If you watch the news in the morning, literally for about it's literally end-to-end pandemic talk. which I don't see why, because it's, you can talk about it up to this point, but the rest of the country, the world's got on. We've still got to eat. We've still got to pay the bills. Still got to look after our families.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge disrespect to most people in some ways, actually, to making the media actually hyping this up to such a point that people are now worried to death, literally. And I think a lot of people are complaining that more people are dying. So there's a couple of facts, or you could call them potential facts, that are coming out. One is that a lot of people are saying that in the last year or two, the mere fact that you're locked up for such a long time has actually created a lot of mental health issues. So the amount of suicides and deaths that you had just from the psychological torment of actually being locked up for such a long time is actually huge in a lot of people's mental health. So I think that's just one point, and I think there's lots of others along that same direction in terms of people's mental health is actually being affected. And the other thing is, if you're stuck indoors, you're not getting out.
Yeah.
It's actually some of this Omicron stuff, and actually being more easily susceptible to actually a virus, is in some ways self-created, because if you're locked up in your house for about a year or two, not getting out, then you're not getting your vitamin D, you're not getting your vitamins, you're not getting your exercise,
Yeah.
you're not keeping yourself mentally focused. The likelihood is your immune system is going to be lower, so you're more likely to be catching something. So, so,
That's a true situation, really. Yeah.
I mean, how do you prove that? Has anybody done any measurements? Is it? Am I saying it intuitively? I don't know, because I'm not proclaiming to be a pandemic expert. But I'm just saying that these are the type of things that I hear people say to me, or I see on social media. So it's quite worrying, actually, the sort of not knowing actually about what the truth of some of this is. And normally you'd expect by now something like a panorama program coming out, the truth about COVID-19, and really what's the other side of the story, what's behind the story. But because everything is so uh, pro the way things are going to be done to protect people, I don't think we're getting a true picture of all the dimensions around the pandemic. Is all I like to say.
Right. So, I know you're not a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but do you think there's a benefit in all of this to governments in the way that this is all being conducted? And it's all being done coincidentally with the lockdown in mind, the economy being bad. You think this is somewhat has a benefit to a certain organization or group of people?
Um, I think Matt Hancock certainly benefited from it.
Okay. What did
Well,
he
you probably
say?
heard all the stories, because I think he was on the board of a couple of PPE type companies. But obviously, that's just a microcosm of what point you're asking. I would say, yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to be had from various organizations. So a lot of the big pharma is definitely uh, benefiting. The Big pharma is probably one of the biggest benefactors from this, but because literally tons of money is being spent. And I suppose any PPE companies are big benefactors, and anybody who's actually, I suppose, ahead of the curve in actually knowing supply chain around PPE, and has access to either buyers or sellers internationally, they're beneficiaries. I mean, there's lots of conspiracy around, the vaccine being created to kill off the African population,
Oh,
so that
okay.
a lot of its resources can be taken. The level of truth behind that, I don't know. But certainly, obviously, if you weaken a lot of all these sort of countries which have got very valuable minerals and resources worth, potentially trillions of dollars, diamonds or gold or oil or other commodities, primarily in Africa, then yeah, I mean, it's quite easy. Depopulation is quite an easy way of then going in and then taking over quite a country with minimal resistance. But
Wow.
that's possibly, if you want to look at it very conspiratorially, how much truth is that, I don't know. But I would certainly say that whether it's a conspiracy or not, if I think the facts behind what the real numbers are and really who's really being hit and to what level,
Mm,
I think if all that was made transparent internationally, it'd be quite interesting chart to see really where the majority of the deaths are.
yeah.
It'd be kind of strange if everything started from China, but it's ended up killing a massive amount of people who are probably already on in poverty level, and then they've been pushed into death level. So I think
Yeah.
that's probably quite scary to think about, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to find out really what level of truth there is behind that. But it may be something we can find out for the next show. I'll have to do some research.
Wow. Okay, so lots of interesting things brought up by Lakhi Singh there. Lots of deep thinking things, a lot of things revolving around the economy and what will be expected in the new year, 2022. Um, okay, we're in the last 2 minutes, I think. I want to ask you, Lakhi Singh, give us a summary of what you think um, most people, especially in property, that's your sweet spot, they should be doing in terms of strategies to secure themselves, or at least have a stronger portfolio, have adequate cash flows, etc.
Right. Okay. So at the risk of sounding a bit like some of these TV gurus that talk about money matters, I can't remember the guy's name now. Is it Martin? Somebody talks about how to manage your money.
Yeah.
Okay, so quite a few critical points. Then I would say, remember we've been discussing this earlier: critical, essential, important, and desirable.
Hmm?
So critical points for you as an individual or a business at the moment are: number one, to do an appraisal of all your businesses, your property portfolio, uh, any debts that you've got, and start thinking about how you could be consolidating those. So that's critical.
That's the
And
key word, critical. Right, consolidation. So we're going to leave you with that. Very healthy advice from Lucky Singh. Very important advice. And I think uh, the word today is consolidation. We'll have Lucky Singh back next week on Monday, and we shall be talking about the relevant hot topics in the world of finance and mortgage debt. We will see you again on Monday, Lucky Singh. Thank you so much for your time. Take care. 8 a.m. tonight.
take care, guys. Thank you, Celine. We
Thank
just
you.
out.
Yeah, whatever. बंद कर दिया।